Yeah, so I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. So on the west side of Detroit, over by Grand River, and the Boulevard. They used to call it Zone 8 because they called the zones by their zip codes. And then we moved out to like Redford, and then out to Brightmoor, or Old Redford, which is Brightmoor. So we was like a half inch away from 8 Mile. That was on about, so out there by Finkel. So that was about 5 mile. So, I mean, growing up in Detroit it was good, but it's like anything. Growing up anywhere is good because you don't know nowhere else. So, but we had a big family. We had a whole community where it was like literally every block we had at least 3 houses on the block. We was renting at least 3 houses. And if you go around the corner to the next block, we had a house there. And then we'd have like another house, a couple of blocks away. So moving away was really, I would say, just moving to a block that we didn't have a family member on. But everybody stayed real close to my granddaddy's house because that was the place. Because like on the weekends we go, and this was back when they used to do the card games all the time. So they'd have like the card games, and it didn't make a difference who you was or what you was doing out in the streets. You was at that card game on Saturdays, and so they'd have a big card game. And if you was lucky enough, or if you was like one of the teens, you got hired to be able to like serve sandwiches or get the drinks or deliver the food because whoever was cooking, and they were selling plates. So it wasn't just your family like that you was born with. It was like everybody in the neighborhood. One person be throwing a card game to raise money for whatever it is. Everybody knew what the table stakes was. So these was like the ghetto casinos, realistically, if you want to call them anything. That's what they were. They were like ghetto casinos. So, and then like the next day on Sundays, if you was the kid, you'd be running around there collecting bottles. Cause in Michigan, if you get a soda bottle or something, you could take it back to the store and get 10 cents. So we was able to, if you didn't get a chance to work the game, the next morning you up and you taking bottles. And I remember it because I used to have an uncle who was, he had some mental health issues, and you had to beat him to the bottles because he'd be out there. But he had some substance abuse issues too. I mean, it went hand in hand. And he'd be out there getting the bottles if you hadn't got them already, and he was up early. I don't remember the time before he had the issues, but they tell me he used to be smart as a whip. I mean, he was trapped tight when it came to the brain. And then he tried some drugs once, and when he tried those drugs, then that's when it kicked in. All of his mental health issues and things kicked in. So I mean, it was Motown, So you could walk around, you could have fun, but you knew where you couldn't be. Alcohol was the big thing. Alcohol was the hugest thing, and weed was just weed, but alcohol was what was killing people. But you had 4 or 5 alcoholics in your family. This is back when they would stand on the side of the corner. They would sing songs and I mean, you could walk to the store at night and you could see them on the corner. You literally could stop by. So like what they do in those movies, that ain't exaggerated. That was Detroit for real. You could do that. This was pre AIDS and pre crack. Crack hadn't hit yet. And so it was still safe to walk everywhere. But when crack hit, it changed. It just changed the game. It changed everything. So I remember the first time I had to deal with death, um, and I'll never forget it because I was in my grandmama's living room, and it was my uncle Lonnie, and Uncle Lonnie was a man's man, flat out. He'd punch holes in walls. In today's society, oh, they would have locked Uncle Lonnie up because he wasn't no joke. He wasn't playing no games. He wasn't about no games. That was our model of being a man. You know, you figure we back in the 70s and 80s. This was right before the 80s and all that other stuff hit. And he was in my grandmother's the foyer when you walk right into the house. We use a big fancy word like foyer, but it wasn't no big old special foyer. It was the first room you walked into when you walked in the house. And he had been drinking, and the alcohol got him. I mean, he literally, I mean, he was an alcoholic, you know, and he just fell over right there in the living room, started bleeding, and just died right there in the living room. It was wild to see that, because like the next day when I woke up, I didn't know whether it was really real, and because this was like all the grandkids and everybody is there. You know, we had those big grand family get-togethers, and everybody was there. So you just found a spot to sleep, and you slept, and it was like a bunch of kids still sleeping right around, and didn't even know what was happening or what was going on. And so, you know, I laid my head back down because I was like, you know, this is the old school where you ain't in grown folks' business. And I didn't find out that that's what happened until like the next day. We was kids, and so we didn't see it as no big thing, right? We knew what it was, but we was little kids, and so we just, you know, we wasn't playing with Uncle Lonnie anyway. He was grown. You wasn't in his face and his space and none of his stuff. So now you just wasn't gonna see him much, but you didn't see him much anyway. So, but I look back at that now and I'm thinking that was like a whole uncle that that I had, you know, that I lost. That was my mama's brother, right? I don't even know what their interaction was. I don't even know what their relationship was like, you know. So, you know, I mean, it wasn't like this was no startling moment for me though, like, oh, I'm gonna be dealing with death forever. You just start dealing with it more and more after that. You know, people don't tell you that. The downside of having a big family is you got a lot of funerals. You know, you got a lot of funerals. Yeah. And so, you know, then the drug epidemic hit. Like I said, we got a huge family, and we had a huge family on one part of town, and we had a huge family on another part of town. And yeah, we weren't exempt, like nobody else was. We wasn't exempt. Here it is, just this new drug thing, and depending on what generation you in, you getting the message, you know, don't do drugs. Depending on what other generation you in, you getting the message on we can make money doing this thing, you know. So, but I will say, regardless of what, it was always that protection of like the little kids, keep them away from it, and you know, people pregnant, different stuff like that. It was always that barrier of protection. And I remember when crack started becoming just rampant, and I remember when AIDS started becoming. I remember when AIDS was the big thing, and everybody was terrified. And I remember being terrified, and I was a kid thinking, well, what's this gonna do to us? But crack and you know, because weed was weed. And if you from Detroit, they have an old saying. Royce the 5'9" said it. Either we some plant workers or we some plant workers. So weed has always been a constant in the environment in Detroit. So it's never been thought of as a thing. But now this crack stuff was different, and I'll tell you, it took a lot of family members from me in different ways. That's the problem with drugs like that. They take from you in different ways. So it ain't just the OD. It's the individual wanting to fast money. It's the individual getting caught up in somebody else's stuff by mistake. You know, And we saw a lot of that happening. That's when my daddy was like, nah, something else gonna happen. So he moved us way out to Old Redford, which when you go and you look at Old Redford now, you're like, it's just as hood as the other neighborhood. But at that time, it wasn't. And he got a house. He was able to buy a house. Still to this day, we don't know how. Because we were growing up at a time where public assistance was just, I mean, they were just giving it to you left and right. All you had to do was be willing to not have a man in your house, and you got food stamps, a check, and everything. And, and so trying to raise 3 kids, 2 parents, it was a little different, right? I remember times when my mom was on assistance and my daddy was working. I remember times when my daddy would have to take all his stuff out the house because they was coming to do like an inspection or something. You know, right, wrong, or indifferent. When you're a kid, you don't question how you getting fed. You getting fed, and so that's what it was. You didn't realize until later on that hey, this ain't how the system's supposed to be. But how the system's supposed to be, if you ain't got no alternative, then this is how the system's supposed to be, because the system is being used to feed me. But my dad, like I said, he figured out how to get a house and he moved us away from all our cousins and all our relatives. And he actually sat down and talked to me and he said, and I'll never forget this because I was like, I don't want to go. I did not want to go. This means I had to catch a bus to school. And so I was still going to schools further away. So I was literally getting up at 5 and 6 in the morning to catch a bus all the way across town by myself. I'm not talking about, I'm grown. I'm talking about I'm in middle school, 6th grade, catching buses like grown men. But he said, I know you don't want to move away right now, but there's always going to come a point where you got to make decisions for your family that people ain't going to like and ain't going to understand. And then just to be honest, you can't give a damn about it. He said, down the line, if you don't like it when you're grown, then you can move right back over there. He said, but right now, I got to give you this chance. All I heard was I can't play with my cousins every day after school. And I was mad about it. I'm not going to say I hated my dad or nothing for that. I am going to say he wasn't on my most loved list right away, because that was family. That's all I knew was family. I came up from that generation where family was everything. Yeah, this is a long time ago. These things have changed in the world now, but family was everything. You fought one of us, you fought all of us, and you did not want to fight all of us. You didn't want no parts of that. But it was good. I loved life in Detroit. I never thought I'd be leaving Detroit for anything. Nothing. I was like, nope, I'll never leave Detroit. This is the D. This is where it goes down. When my dad moved us out there, though, he started exposing me to some other stuff. And, I had a whole different side of family, a whole nother side, my dad's side. So his uncles, my uncles on his side, my aunts on his side. He used to send me down to Alabama every summer. And I don't know why they do that, because it's too hot down there. I can't do it. But, that was his way, I guess, of exposing you to different stuff so that you could learn different stuff. But it didn't take us away from the fact that crack was in our city and it was taking people. So, I have friends and family that it took them. And you would see some people that you would think back in the day was just beautiful. And the next minute you walking up on them and you can tell they on drugs and they strung out. I have an uncle that just disappeared. The same uncle that was had the mental issues and was on substance abuse, you know, 20 years in, we can only assume that he's passed away because we have no knowledge of it, none. I mean, he was on the substance, so he would do stuff like come in the house and steal whatever wasn't tied down. Everybody who lived in the house had to have a lock or something on their door, but it is what it is. And my grandmother, she had the biggest heart. She had the biggest heart. And my granddad had the most love because he put up with stuff that I would have thought that no, I wouldn't have put up with it. But because of the love he had for my grandmother, when my uncle was coming in and stealing stuff out, and she would still let him back in because she didn't want him out on the streets with no place to stay, being unsafe. He would still just try to make the adjustment, So then he'd put locks on everybody's room in the house, and they put locks on the deep freezer. Well, he put locks on the deep freezer because there was so many of us. We'd go through that food, and quite simply, yeah, we went through that food. I saw from her just such life and such love. And I saw from him such love for her to the likes of which I had never seen. I mean, my mom and daddy loved each other, but they ended up getting divorced over time, and I mean, they're grown. They do what they're gonna do. But when I graduated high school, was right around the time my grandmother had a stroke. And I was genuinely conflicted. I wasn't a favorite grandkid, but I wasn't a trouble grandkid. And so my grandmother was always happy to see me. But now I had to see her a different way. And that was hard. Because I had to go all the way across town to take her to her doctor's appointments. Had to load her into the car, and it was a little car low to the ground, but my daddy gave it to me. And so I had to get up early, take him to work, then head over there, take her to the doctor's appointments, run around with my granddaddy. And if I needed gas, he'd give me gas, but I wasn't trying to take no money from him. And it was difficult because at that point, I was already back from college for the first semester. And I was trying to figure out and sort out what to do. And then here it is, my grandmother's needing this help. And I'm like, God, we got so many cousins and relatives and uncles and this and that. Where's everybody at? And that's when I had to learn that, look, the world don't revolve around just one person. Everybody can do some things, and that's how it's supposed to be, but everybody can't do everything. And I wanted to kind of do everything. But I was noticing that I had to do something. This was that time when they was always telling black kids, look, you're not even expected to make it to 18. You're not even expected to survive or make it to 21. And so you're growing up with that mentality that you ain't gonna even make it to 21. So you kind of live a little reckless because you're like, I'm not expected to make it. I'm supposed to be a statistic. And they pushed that narrative so hard, but it was true. I don't have a childhood friend. By the time I got to 25, I didn't have a childhood friend still alive. I'm not talking about family. I mean, just childhood friend. And I was like, wow. So I started feeling like, oh, special. But I had to do something at that time. So I didn't want to get myself into a whole bunch of more school debt because I had more school I had to pay for because I was a knucklehead. I didn't do what I did need to do the first semester. And so then I left the school owing them money, and I owed them like $1,000. At that time, $1,000? $1,000? You might as well told me $1 million. because that's how I was going to be treated. But I saw that the military was an option. I could go, I could travel, I could make money, I could pay my bills. And at that point, my parents were still they were still together though. But I was like, okay, I want to try this. But I was conflicted because I'm like, okay, I'm running my grandmother back and forth. What am I, what am I gonna do? And then it just came to me. I have to go out and do. I had to do. I got to live. I got to make something out of it, or else I'm gonna be a statistic. So I enlisted, and then they put me on what's called the DEP, Delayed Entry Program. And so I had like the whole summer to have fun. That is the worst program on the planet. Not service of the military, because I never had no problem with that. But I get a whole summer to live. And then I gotta go to the service? No, I should have just went straight on. Because the closer I got to the time frame, the more I started thinking, well, what if I don't go? What can they really do to me if I don't go? I just went ahead and went. And shit hit the fan. My mama was like, don't go. The minute you go, they're going to have a war. I'm like, Mama, they ain't going to have no war just because I'm going. Listen to your mama. They had a war. Then I had to go to Desert Storm, and a lot of people went. A lot of people didn't go too. A lot of people did some foul stuff not to go. And I was just like, really? Oh, we had this one young lady that I ain't gonna even try to remember her name. But I was like, that's kind of foul because you've been taking this money from the government all this time, like you was here for it. And the minute she found out that we were going, she ran out and got pregnant. And I don't say, oh, well, she could have just gotten pregnant. No, she literally was saying she's going to go get pregnant. And she went and got pregnant. She was literally trying to have sex as much as she could with whoever so that she could get pregnant. And one of the guys in our platoon fell for it. And so she got pregnant because she had enough time to show she was pregnant. And he went off the Desert Storm with us, and she stayed back because she was pregnant. During Desert Storm, it hit again. So I mean, death got a funny way of coming, right? And sometimes you don't know. I ain't gonna never say death is a blessing, but death got its own language. Because while I was gone, my grandmother passed away, and we sitting there smack dab in the desert. And I love my granny. Oh, I love my granny. And the Red Cross reached out, and my first sergeant, I'll never forget him. Top Tilly, I'll never forget him. And he said, "You need to go home." I wasn't crying and begging and none of that to go home because I was like, I thought it was war. I thought there wasn't that option. And he did what he do, and they put me on a couple of transports going back. And so I literally was moving backwards with some other soldier groups that were going back to do other stuff. And then they got me home, and I literally got home just in time enough for them to put my grandmother into the ground. I struggle with that because I struggle with that complex of what if I'd have been there? Could it have been something I could have done, you know, but it wasn't. Wasn't nothing I could do. I can say that now as a man, but as a young boy, I couldn't say that. As a young boy, all I remember is I left to go live and see the world. And now here I am back, and I lost one of the most important pieces of the world to me. I still struggle with it. I'm gonna lie. I mean, I know it ain't nothing I could have done, but I still struggle with it. Cause how don't you? How don't you struggle with it? This is your grandmother. How don't you struggle with it? That was the most powerful woman I ever knew. Her and her sister, the two most powerful women in the city. Because I tell you, if they said something was going to happen before sundown, it happened. Period. I don't care what it is, good, bad, or ugly. The two of them said it was going to happen. Oh, it happens. I seen those two ladies stop wars, literally. Stop what could have been the bloodiest war you ever would have seen. Just on their word of, oh, no, you ain't. And that's it. So, yeah, you try to reconcile with it. You know, and people talk about, well, grief is this, grief is that. Grief is it's an ever project. I mean, I'm 50 some years old. This happened when I was 20 something. And I'm still like, you know, if I would have stayed, what could I have done? You know, I do know though, to be honest, if I would have stayed where I would have been, um, and I wouldn't have been in a good place because it was too easy for me in that city. That's why I don't go back and live there now because it's too easy for me. I got enough family there where it's too easy to get into wrong. Um, you know, our family got enough family, extended family, where you know, and our extended family is different. It's oh, that's such and such boy. Okay, then they good. All right, as long as they don't do nothing silly, they good. You get the credit of your ancestors. I think the loss that hurt me most was uh was losing my mama because that was my rock. We went through it. We went from me being a little hard headed boy and thinking that oh this old woman don't know nothing to basically I did anything for that woman. I did anything for my mom. My mama called me once and sent me on a mission to drive all the way to Atlanta to pick up her grandbaby after I had just worked a 12-hour shift. And I was dead broke. And she said, my grandbaby gonna be put in the system because of some other stuff that was happening if somebody from the family ain't there to pick her up. Now, I'm talking about little grandbaby. Um, and I told her, I said, well, I don't, you know, have no money and no way. I didn't have nothing. I was out. I don't even think I had the rent. I think maybe I had the rent. That was about it. She was like, I don't care how you do it. Get my baby. And it got done. It got done. Don't ask me how. Don't ask me where we came up with the money at, but it got done. I could call and talk to my mom about anything, anything. And you grow into that kind of love, and then that's gone. Mm, that hurt every day. I may hum a song or think about an old song, and it might blow my whole day out. And everybody asks a gazillion questions trying to figure out the why. And it was natural causes. But everybody got their own conspiracy and this and that, and well, how and the why. And I'm like, what difference do it matter? They gone. You know, me and my brother ain't never been the closest. But he said some things that stuck with me. When we were burying my mama, he said, don't nobody get out alive. Don't nobody get out alive. He said, so come to resolve with that. Two things. Don't nobody get out alive. And don't nobody love you as much as when you dead. I was like, boy, how come you couldn't be this insightful throughout our whole life? But yeah, ain't no real words of encouragement. I wish I could say something that'd be real profound for the video. To be like, well, it's always darkest before that. Fuck that. Fuck that. My mama gone. What you need to worry about is how that make me feel and what I do. Those were my thoughts. But things happen for a reason. And I have been trying to get my mother to come down here and visit me forever. And she finally did come down. And we got to spend a couple of weeks together. And I tell you, I had a ball. I took her to Red Lobster every time because that's where she wanted to go. And she got in that pool. Her and my wife got along. She signed off on my wife. And that for me was the biggest thing. That was the biggest thing. And that day when we got the call that they had found my mama, they wouldn't call me. They called my wife. Because they knew. Nobody else on this planet delivered that news to me. Except this woman who had stood by me all the years that she had stood by me. This woman who she had every chance and opportunity to leave me. Well, I ain't had nothing. And every time in life I fail, it was a we fail. And then we got back up. Wasn't no just I fail. And so this was the only woman that could deliver that news to me. And I think that that's the most hurtful thing that ever happened to me in my life. But because of the capacity of love that I had for that woman. The fact that my mama signed off on this woman. Mama knew this woman and they sat, they talked. She knew what it meant to me. She knew what had to be done. And she did what had to be done without hesitation in the way that it needed to be done. That's why I tell people, it's a club I don't want nobody to be in. Losing somebody you love. At first, it used to just be losing your mama, but then I had to think about this losing somebody you love. Cause now I gotta think, what about the next time? And then you got mothers out here that's losing their children. And that's a whole different thing. I think Bobby Blue Bland or somebody got a song called Members Only. And it says, members only, it's a private party. Don't need no money to qualify. This is definitely a club that you don't want to be a part of. But don't nobody get out alive. Don't nobody get out alive.